how hard it can be. We're going to look at some things, and I typed my notes, and I went back and read them and changed them because it didn't sound right. So I redid portions of them and redid portions of them. So if my notes don't make sense, it's because I read them 3 or 4 times, and even after I wrote it, I couldn't make sense of it sometimes. So hopefully, after the third or fourth reading, I've got it so that it at least makes some sense, I hope. Biblical admonitions. We covered several of these last week. Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. What is the number one method in which fathers provoke children to wrath? There are several, but what is the one that we covered last week that provokes children to wrath? It's usually on purpose. It's not usually an accident, although in a few cases maybe. What can fathers do? And fathers would include the mom. What can we do that makes kids mad? And as we'll see, in some cases do irreparable damage. What is it, Dave? Well, okay, that wasn't the one that we covered last week. Yeah, you tell a kid don't do it. It's like you draw a line and say, don't you cross that line. You know what a kid's going to do? He's going to get as close to that line and see what you do. Then he's going to slide over a 1/16 of an inch, and he's going to keep sliding to see what your limit really is. And when you tell him no, it's, but in context of last week and the chapter that we're dealing with, how can we provoke kids to wrath? Or for that matter, adults, but adults come under one of the other verses. I gave the illustration. I have I'll have to be careful, but a lady that I know, cousins on my mom or dad's side, I don't remember. Yeah, I do remember. It was on one side or the other. She was told she was ugly. She was told she would never amount to anything. Yeah, you'd have to know the family. And then another lady that I mentioned, beautiful lady, I saw her not long ago, still very beautiful. She was told she was ugly. She would never find a man that would marry her because she was so ugly. And so my cousin married the first guy that came along that halfway paid attention to her. And so she got married because as ugly as she was, she figured she would never get anything better, so she married this guy. And are they still married, or do you know? Kathy said, my wife says they're still married, but she was miserable. They had a son who was the same age as our oldest, and the boy was told he was stupid. The boy was told he was dumb. He would never amount to anything. And so I haven't seen him since Mom and Dad's funeral. But he was told how stupid he was. And so the boy grew up not doing anything because I'm too stupid to do anything. And so words can cause, and we'll get to that, irreparable damage. But it can also make them mad. I have seen this. I've not. See if I've got any money on me. I don't usually. I think I fill a quarter. Yes, I've got a quarter. This is my quarter, okay? You're not getting it. But pretend. Can you pretend? Okay. I tell you, if you'll shake my hand, I'll give you this quarter. Oh, she shook it. But I've seen it, and that's okay. You don't know the game. You know, they go to shake hands and they pull the hand back. Up, you don't get the quarter. You didn't shake my hand. You know, it's the bait and switch. You know, it's like, I promise I'll give you this, and then jerk it back. And you play this word game, and after a while, the kid gets frustrated. The kid gets aggravated. They learn they can't believe you. And that's another thing that provokes them. Lie to them. You know, lie to them. I was someplace the other day, and I wanted to grab a kid so bad. You do that again, and I'm going to spank you. Kid does it again. You do that again, I'm going to spank you. Kid does it again. You do that again, I'm going to spank you. And it's like either spank him or shut up. One or the other. But words can provoke to wrath. In Colossians, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. In the 3 cases that I mentioned, the kid became discouraged. I also mentioned that we point out every negative thing they do, and they finally conclude, I can't do anything right. Why bother? So, you know, they become discouraged. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. One of the things police officers are trained, I don't know if all of them are or not, but I know some of them are. They will put you through training, and I got to go through some of it at the academy. They will put you through training to see if they can make you mad. In your case, they would call you every word for a black person except something that would be nice. They would call you every word in the book. They would call you every name you could think of because they're trying to see if they can make you mad. Because in the field, that's going to happen. You're going to be called every name in the book. You're going to be called, I can't even bring myself to say the word, but you're going to be called everything in the book, because when you're out there, if somebody can make me mad and get so mad that I hit them, I just lost my job, and they just got rich because they're going to sue the department. They're going to sue. So they train you. And I've seen it. And I actually several officers would use me in this capacity. It's like, okay, you and your husband are fighting. Okay, you're physically knocked down, drag out. The officer will take one. It's like, why don't you come over here with me? Why don't you just come over here and talk to me a little bit? And I keep my voice soft, you know, and I try to de-escalate, and he's de-escalating so that when you bring you back together, you're not still fighting, you're not still going on. So a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And I mean, I have seen officers called everything you could think of. Grievous words, and this can be true. I had a member years ago, and I never tried it because I didn't want to prove her wrong. This was years ago. She really, really, really loved me. She really loved me as a pastor. And she said one day, she said, there is nothing you could ever say or do that would make me dislike you. And I said, She said, you can't say or do anything that would make me dislike you. And I said, bet I could. She said, what would you say? I said, I'm not going to say it. And there were several things. Grievous words, I don't care who you are. I don't care how good of a Christian you are. Grievous words stir up anger. They just do. And growing up, I was a saint. I was most of the time. I had my little wings, my angel wings. I was the nicest kid, but every once in a while, I would say something just to get my dad stirred up. I know it's hard to believe me doing that, but yeah, and I was very good. I got spanked, but I was still pretty good at it. Grievous words, whether it be in church, whether it be in home. Well, I have to go on because I do want to finish tonight, at least this portion of it. How long will you vex my soul and break me in pieces with words? If you read the book of Job, which is where that was taken from, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar said everything you could think of to hurt Job. And so after a while, how long will you vex my soul and break me in pieces with words? All right, that's where we left last week. The tongue is but a very small member of the body. I gave you the measurements last week. The average man's tongue is 3.3 inches. The average lady's tongue is 6 feet, the average lady's tongue is 3 feet 1 inch. And they measure from that little flappy doodle back there. What did I say? 3.1 inches. Sorry. 3.1 inches. Yeah. I know some that theirs had to be twice as long because we had a member in Ohio. Never met anybody like her. Don't ever want to. But you know how you talk, and I'm talking, and I pause to breathe, and then I talk, and I pause to breathe. She could talk breathing out and breathing in. She could talk even while she was breathing in. Never met anybody like her. But it still is a little bitty piece of our body compared to the rest of our body. The tongue can make you look like an idiot. Been there, done that a few times. You say something like 3 feet 1 inch, and y'all are very gracious. You know, you laughed, but you didn't throw things at me. The tongue can say things. What is it? Better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Something like that. Proverbs has several sayings like that. The tongue is worse than a forest fire. A forest fire will either eventually, they will put it out, bring it under control, or eventually it will burn out. It may burn thousands of acres, but eventually a forest fire, will eventually burn out or get put out. But the tongue can cause damage that will never end in this life. The tongue can speak some of the most vile, filthy, vulgar words that you can imagine. The tongue can persuade people. Do you know that, and this is not in the notes, but a lot of crime is committed. Yeah, I thought so. I hit the corner of the thing in it. A lot of crime is committed because one person persuades everybody else to do it. You know, it only takes one person. Oh, come on. I don't want to. Oh, come on. Are you a coward? Are you a scaredy cat? And, you know, they can keep on. Words can persuade you to do something that you would never do on your own. And that's where especially kids get into a lot of things because they were persuaded. But so are adults. Who wants to be called a scaredy cat? You yellow-bellied, good-for-nothing. You know, you're just a scaredy cat. Yeah, nanny, 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 you know, and you know how people are. And so we give in and we do things because somebody used words in a very influential way. The tongue can be very persuasive. And I can't give every example that I thought of. But if I were good enough, and some people are, they can persuade you that there's a guy in back with a mask on. He's got an AR-15, and he is looking for somebody. If I were good enough, I could persuade you that there's somebody back there, even though cameras don't show anything. You know, there's nobody come in. But words can persuade people to things that aren't even true. I have known people personally, name, family, know them, who were convinced by a psychologist, or was it a psychiatrist? I don't remember which. I always get those two mixed up. That she was a brat of a kid. I mean, she was a brat of a kid. She had all kinds of anger issues. She had other issues. So her parents took her to a psychologist to find out what's this all about. And he convinced her that her uncle had raped her when she was young. It split the whole entire family. I mean, it split everybody. And then later on, she finally admitted, he never touched me. The psychiatrist told me he did. The psychiatrist described what he would have done and convinced me. But by that time, it was too late. Everybody wasn't speaking. The uncle's reputation was ruined, and it never recuperated. The tongue can, I've already covered that. It can say things that will defile and corrupt our entire body, and it can stir up more trouble than you will ever see the end of in this life. I mentioned that one girl. Her dad and I were very close. Well, we still are, but, you know, we don't. I left the church, left the state. But the tongue can say something that people will never get over. Never get over. If they live to be 100, certain words will cut, and that wound will never heal because of words that were spoken. The tongue often speaks from the heart, and we'll get to that. Well, we won't get to that tonight. That's in the next lesson. But my father used to have a saying, many a truth is told in jest. How many of you know what that means? I tell you, you're dumber than a rock. I'm just being funny, honey. But deep down inside, my tongue is really speaking what I really believe. Sometimes the tongue can express what's on the heart, even though we may pretend it was not, I was joking, but I will, there's certain things that Dad had a saying of that I just can't ever forget. You tell the truth because that's what's in your heart, and when you open your mouth, sometimes the heart speaks, and you say what you really think and what you really mean, but then you have to cover it up as if you were joking and pretend like that you really didn't mean it. The tongue can let secrets go. I was talking to a friend of mine, trying to think which pastor it was. I've talked to a lot lately, and I can't remember which one was where. But he was talking that, trying to think who the pastor was. I forgot what the point was. That sometimes as a pastor, we have to be really, really, really careful. And I'm going to pick on you because you haven't been here in a few weeks. You've been sick, or so you said. She comes to me and says, Pastor, I need to talk to you. And she tells me things that nobody in the world is supposed to know. I know pastors, not intentionally, one was intentional. You tell him something top secret, the next time he's in the pulpit, he's going to announce it. So we learn, don't tell him anything. But we have to be careful that our tongue doesn't slip and say something that was told in confidence. One word can ruin a family. One word can ruin a church. One word can ruin an individual. In my early years, I didn't keep anything from my wife. We were one in body, one in mind, one in heart. But I learned, and nothing against her by any means, but sometimes I have to guard my tongue to not let something slip. So then if I tell her, we have two people now who have to guard so that it doesn't slip. So the best way to make sure it doesn't slip is don't tell anybody. Something is confidential. My wife never knows it. Nobody ever knows it. And that's what this preacher was talking about the other day. That sometimes you think, I wish I didn't know that. So the tongue can let things slip without even thinking about it until it's already out. And the old expression, you can't put the milk back in the jar after it's spilled on the ground. Something along that line. You may know what I'm talking about. Don't cry over spilt milk. But there's one that you can't put the milk back in the bottle after it's spilled. Once that word is spoken, that word is out there forever. It's almost like, and for everybody, anything you put on the internet is there for infinity. The tongue can begin flirtatious. I'm going to pick on my wife because I'd get in trouble with any other wife. But pretend we're not married. And it's like, wow, you really look nice today. Does your husband appreciate how beautiful you are? I just said something that opened the door to something much farther. And even I've just, if I like your dress, I'm going to tell you, I like your dress, and if you want to get offended, that's your problem, not mine. But the tongue can say it in such a way that it becomes flirtatious and becomes more. The same can be said of anger, bitterness, gossip. Did you all know what's Prince Andrew's wife's name? Katie. Y'all know who Katie is? She's the Duchess of some place. Her husband is the next in line to be king. His wife had surgery a couple of weeks ago, and it is. They're keeping it pretty hush-hush. But I read today that she's really in a coma, and they don't want anybody to know it, and she may not survive. And then I read something else that was a little less conspiracy theory. And it's like she's up, she's walking around, she's taking care of the 3 kids. You know, she's not allowed to overdo it after surgery. But, you know, that one article said that she's really in a coma. I wonder how many people will believe that. I'm sure, yeah. Whereas I had enough sense to know this tends to be a little over the edge anyway. But words can put all kinds of thoughts. It can stir up anger. It can stir up bitterness. Somebody comes and will blame you. You tell me, you know, this lady, I don't call names when we're live streaming, but she really wasn't sick. I saw her at Walmart. Do what? Well, yeah. We did have a member many, many years ago that she would send word that she was too sick to come to church. But one of our members got out right after the amen and went to Walmart, and there she was pushing her cart, shopping, going up and down, nothing wrong. But words can, you know what I'm going to do if I believed you? I'm going to get offended at her. She lied to me. And I can, all because he said one word that ended up not being true. All right. Speculation can destroy somebody. A simple word can cause a mob. Look in the book of Acts where, you know, they had almost a riot over one man who was Paul had cast demons out, and they saw their prophets going down the drain. A tiny spark can burn hundreds of thousands of acres. A simple word can start a war or hurt feelings that go beyond that. The tongue is naturally full of evil, and words can defile our heart, our mind. Mankind can control a lot of animals. When we were in Texas, we took our kids to a circus. First time in my life I had ever been to a circus. And so we took our kids to a circus, and they had these great big elephants. And they would do things, and the elephant would stand up, the elephant would bow down. You know, they had trained the elephant. I've been to, and I can't help me think where we were. They had trained, I don't know where it was. I'm fine. I just lost my balance. I'm fine. They had trained dolphins. And they could do something, and that dolphin would get up and ring a bell, or, you know, they trained it. They can train monkeys to do all kinds of things. But it's impossible to tame the tongue. No man can tame the tongue. In verse 8. But as I said, well, I didn't say it last week. We didn't get there. The question is, no man can tame the tongue, but can the tongue be tamed? Yes? How many of you think yes? The tongue can be tamed. But no man can do it. So how can the tongue be tamed? That's a tongue twister. How can the tongue be tamed if no man can tame it? You know the answer, Noah? What's the answer? He's bashful whenever I call on him. I'm sorry. God can tame it. You know, it's like an addiction. I know people, I've known people, my uncle was one of them. He was a chain smoker, 2-3 packs a day. Had a heart attack, almost died. Doctor told him, you either give up cigarettes or you will die. He gave it up for a couple of weeks, and the addiction was so strong that he finally said he would rather die than go without his cigarettes. I've known people, we used to have a member, he died before any of you all came along, but he was a smoker, heavy smoker. And he said when God saved him, God showed him that Christianity and smoking did not match. He said he laid down his cigarettes, got up, never touched another cigarette till the day he died. One is, I'm trying to stop. The other is, I'm letting God stop me. I can't stop. I don't have the willpower. I don't have the strength. But God can stop me. God can take away. Same thing with the tongue. I just can't control myself. I had one of my doctors yesterday. We were talking, and I said something about it. I said, I was talking to somebody, and she said, you talking? I can't believe such. Well, obviously, I do talk, but I try to be more careful what I say. All right. Next week, we